So CNN hosted a town hall with the NRA and gun reform advocates. It seemed like more of a debate to me than a town hall. And many of the students from the Florida high school that just got shot up were there. So these are people who just saw their friends get murdered. And now CNN decided, hey, let's make money off this, and let's pit pro-gun people versus anti-gun people and see what happens. So I'm about to show you Dana Loesch. She's an advocate for the NRA. She works for the NRA, I think. She has some sort of a contract with them. She's representing the pro-gun position, and she has to tell people who just saw their friends get killed that, no, really, more guns is the answer. But you're going to notice something here. She really can't just come out and say that, because I think on some level she knows how that's a disingenuous argument. So she has to concede certain points. And you know what? Let me just show you it, because you're going to see what she says, and then we'll juxtapose that with the reality of what the NRA actually stands for.
I don't believe that this insane monster should have ever been able to obtain a firearm. Ever. I do not think that he should have gotten his hands on any kind of weapon. That's number one. This individual was nuts. And I, nor the millions of people that I represent as a part of this organization that I'm here speaking for, none of us support people who are crazy, who are a danger to themselves, who are a danger to others, getting their hands on a firearm.
We do need to have some gun control reform. 18-year-olds should never have a rifle. An 18-year-old kid should not have a rifle. 18-year-old kid, they're not adults yet. They're in high school. These kids should not have a rifle.
Individuals, I mean, if you're old enough to vote, you're old enough to drive a car, you're old enough to serve your country, I think that you are old enough now, here's the caveat, if anyone wants to listen to the caveat. The caveat, though, Jake, and for everybody out there, is if you are not a danger to yourself or others.
So if an individual was threatened and it was real, that's a crime. But if he's posting things...
They were threatened with death. They were threatened that they were going to bleed. They were threatened that they were going to be killed.
Well, what's your specific case?
And he had already taken bullets and knives to school. He had already assaulted people. He assaulted his parent. He assaulted other students. 39 visits. And this was known to the intelligence and law enforcement community. Now, I'm not saying that you can be everywhere at once, but this is what I'm talking about. We have to follow up on these red flags.
Okay, so first of all, at the end there, what she's doing is blaming the officer. That's what she's doing at the end. She's saying, "Hey, what? You guys should have done more. I don't understand why you didn't do more. You're the sheriff. You're the sheriff, and there were signs that this guy was on edge. So maybe you should have done more. Maybe this is your fault." Now, that's a bullshit argument for a variety of reasons, but probably the most important reason is it would have been the FBI's jurisdiction, because the FBI are the people who got countless warnings about this guy, and they didn't act on it. Now, originally, I had read an article about how, they did follow up, and they talked to him, and, they didn't think there was anything they could do. But then I've read articles after that which claim no, even though many people warned the FBI about this guy, they didn't actually act, and we all know what ended up happening. I mean, he posted under his actual name. He posted on YouTube, and there's just one example of countless stuff. I'm going to be a professional school shooter. He had a history of comments and actions that led to the reality of his classmates saying, "Oh, we think he's going to be a school shooter. He's definitely the most likely to be a school shooter." And the NRA actually has this program where they take teenagers and they train them to be marksmen. Guess who was enrolled in that program? Nicholas Cruz, the guy who did the shooting. So, man, that's a ballsy argument for Dana Loesch to make, to tell the sheriff, hey, why didn't you do more? See, that's the thing that's really annoying about this. I mean, you were in a position where you could have done more. I mean, all the signs were there. And remember, this guy legally passed the background check. To which I say, well, then this is clearly a case of the background check not being stringent enough. I mean, what do you look at in a background check? Shouldn't one of the things you look at be, I don't know, their entire history of online interactions, their social media accounts? I mean, it would be pretty easy to spot. If you just search the fucking guy's name, his exact name, you would have found a tremendous amount of worrying stuff. But here's the point that I alluded to before the video clip. So Dana Loesch is saying there, listen, everybody in the NRA, we don't want guys like this to get a gun. We don't want it. Okay, so then what you're arguing for is universal background checks with strong standards. That's what you're arguing for. That's the implication of what you're saying. No doubt about it, that's the point you're making. Well, take a look at this. NRA's LaPierre, need for more background checks, an absolute fallacy. Not only is it the position of the NRA that background checks are not a good idea, they went to court to try to say universal background checks are unconstitutional. So this is what we call doublespeak. When there's a shooting and it's so clear that, hey, we got some giant fucking loopholes in this background check system now, don't we? The NRA will trot out there and say, well, of course, every reasonable person agrees we should have universal background checks with strong standards. But then all of their lobbying, all of their activism, all of their lawsuits are on the other side of that issue. So at the end of the day, you have to call this out for what it is. It's a lie. That's just a lie. You don't think Dana Loesch knows that the NRA has done, actually not one, many lawsuits arguing, oh, universal background checks are unconstitutional. She knows that, and in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if she's directly involved with some of those actions. So this is just, how are you supposed to get reform, and how are you supposed to have an honest discussion about the issue if one side is obfuscating, deflecting, and flat out lying? Because again, that's what this is. The NRA has a history of fighting against background checks, and now after shooting, they say, no, we're totally for background checks. And this reminds me of what happened after the Las Vegas shooting, where 58 people were murdered. Remember the Las Vegas shooting? There was a concert going on, and then a lunatic from a hotel window took out 58 people. Well, he used bump stocks, which turns weapons into fully automatic weapons. Now, automatic weapons, automatic weapons are banned, but we have a giant loophole where you have a device that turns a weapon into a fully automatic weapon, and that's allowed. So the NRA, after that one, and I got duped by it because I remember doing a segment about it, they came out and said, yeah, hey, maybe bump stock shouldn't be allowed. What really should happen is the Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, or whatever the fuck the name of that department is, they should look under current regulations to try to see if we can get rid of these things. But notice the wording there. The wording is, hey, we should look under current regulations to see if they should not allow these things. Meanwhile, the government body that they referenced isn't in charge of regulating anything like that. So that's a sleight of hand trick. Hey, we're for the current regulations being used against bump stocks, and we're for this government agency being the government agency that cracks down on them, but you couldn't do anything about them under existing regulations, number one, and number two, the agency you reference isn't even responsible for regulating it. So that's a trick. It's a trick. It's a trick. It's a trick. It's, oh yeah, we're for reasonable things. Tee-hee-hee, I guess we're not actually for reasonable things because you can't do anything or change anything. So they're lying. They're lying. There's no other way to fucking talk about this. That's what's going on here. And what's really frustrating is, in the rest of that CNN town hall, Jake Tapper just let Dana Loesch get away with lie after lie after lie after lie. And this is, one of the main things that concerns me about CNN and how they conduct themselves. They do this with global warming too. They'll have a scientist debate a fucking idiot skeptic who's paid by the oil industry, and they'll act like it's 50-50. And so they'll let them have the debate, and then they'll fucking cut to commercial. Well, hold on now. Your job as the fucking reporter or the journalist is supposed to be to go, okay, this person says this person said that. Here's the truth based on the statistics, based on the numbers and the data and the studies, and let me give you that truth before we cut to the break. So, okay, you saw the debate. Now I'm here to fact check it, and now we're going to go off to the debate. No, but what they do now is you just present both sides, then you move along. So, you're for, you think climate change is real, you think climate change is fake, all right, cut to commercial. But that's a classic example of the, yes, overused phrase, but in this case happens to be true, false equivalence. That's what that is. And to have this debate, like, I get it. Listen, you're never going to not get people to debate contentious issues like this, but my point is there is an objective reality out there on many of these questions. And if you're being intellectually honest, you will declare what that objective reality is at the end of the arguments from both sides, and they don't do that. So now people walk away from this gun debate and they go, well, some people say more guns is the answer, some people say less guns is the answer, and that's the end of the conversation. But that is a totally skewed and misleading picture, and at the end of the day, that ends up being a bias in favor of the pro-gun people, because you're not telling the reality of the situation. You're not, for example, going through the numbers and showing how every other developed country has stronger gun laws. And look at that, they have much less gun violence. So it's not a coincidence that we have over 300 million guns in this country, and then we have 32,000 gun deaths a year, including 12,000 homicides. That's not a coincidence. We have the most gun violence and the most guns. So they're never going to give you the straight dope. They're never going to do it. They're always going to make it a debate and a question, and they're going to let people like Dana Loesch get away with out-and-out lies.